G'day everyone, Pep Aussie here. I hope you're all well in whatever part of the world you're watching this video. Today is Friday the 23rd of August 2019 and the time here is 10:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time. Well folks, as always, just so much going on. You literally cannot keep up with this stuff. And it's kind of prompted me to make a bit of a decision about what I'm going to do moving forward as regards to videos. Hang on. And I think I've decided that I'm just going to concentrate on China, financial, and prepping. That's it. As regards to Q and what's going on in America, etc. Yeah, maybe if something relevant comes up, but look, there's so many people out there. And to be honest, as I said, Stroppy Me is the best for Q. I don't care what anybody says. He tells you like it should be said, and you have to, listen to what he's saying. He doesn't try to hypothesize anything on it. Big word for an Aussie, hypothesize. So look, I'm going to leave it. In the future, I'm just going to leave it at that. There's too much going on. Just can't keep up. China, if you're an Australian, if you're anybody in the world, to be honest with you, China's our biggest worry, in my opinion. So let's move forward a bit. This is my great sponsor, Totally Rawsome, who make all this stuff, turmeric paste, Kirka bombs. Sorry, I haven't got my glasses on. Moom, Oak Beard Care, Tinky Bath, and less is more. They make golden activated turmeric paste, which is the stuff that I take, which is this one. It is fantastic, folks. If you haven't tried it, you really should. If you're an old fart like me, it does wonders for your joints. And I'm not kidding. I literally don't use anything for my knee anymore. It's just turmeric paste. It just seems to work, so I just keep using it. Okay, the other day I showed you a video. Sorry I haven't been on either. I've just been bloody flat chat at home doing stuff and a few other things. I showed you a video of the Chinese protest in Adelaide, which went rogue. Well, thankfully, Australian politicians went, whoa, hang on a minute, that wasn't supposed to happen. Matter of fact, they were shocked, completely shocked. At least 100 of them had a big poo-pah about it. So much so that, as I predicted, they are now going to have a bigger one and it's going to turn into bloodshed. There's no two ways about it. Here's the interesting things that came out of it. The communists did a big full-page spread in their newspapers and in their and also on their news on the TV stations, congratulating the Chinese communists who stood up to the protesters. Fact. The real worry was the guy walking around with the camera, which I had said to you guys was pretty nefarious at best. Well, I'm going to show you an article in a second. They've already started to get into the people who this guy was filming, because he sent that back to China. And anybody who didn't have a mask on got filmed, and they are now hammering them back in China, their relatives, everything else. Now remember, in China, everything runs on a social credit score. So I don't know where that's going. I'll show you the article actually. This is it here. Hong Kong protesters targeted on Chinese social media platform WeChat following protest in Adelaide. Well, there's loads of other articles as well in the ABC as regards to what happened. Let me see if I can find some of them here. Here's some of the some of the information that's coming out about China. Beijing supports protests. I'll put the link in the description box so you can read these. Morrison warns Vietnam against Chinese aggression in South China Sea. And then just underneath that, Solomon Islands MPs issue warning over China. Look, there's one more at the bottom that I'm going to show you, which should worry all of us. This one here. China Army may enter Hong Kong to quell protests. Now, listen, everything that glitters isn't gold. You know what I mean? In the very near future, you're going to see the whole world's going to see who China and what they are when they go into Hong Kong. There's no love lost between the Chinese government and the Hong Kongians, if that's what you call them. They've grown up with democracy, etc., freedoms, everything we take for granted, and they are going to be shown in the next couple of weeks exactly what being communist means. You're going to see mass arrests and mass deaths. The Chinese government is not going to pussyfoot around here. Although Hong Kong's a jewel in the Pacific, Hong Kong is not, in the eyes, cannot be left as it is any longer by the Chinese government. So they are going to go in. At first they'll go in and it'll just be, you know, the troops wandering the streets or whatever. And then that's when it's going to turn ugly, because the protesters are obviously going to get upset about that. And then there's going to be riots, and then there's going to be deaths. It's as simple as that, really. You could just about bet your house on it, to be honest with you. And then the whole world is going to see China for who they really are and what they're all about. Now, the interesting thing with the ABC is that for the last 5 years, it's been bent over and they've been bending over and grabbing their ankles for everything to do with China, how good they are, how nice they are, blah, 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 blah. Well, the reality is they're a communist state. And just lately, and I don't know whether it's by political persuasion or whatever, but the ABC is now turned to the point where they're actually saying the Chinese are now pretty nefarious. And let's be honest, they're a little bit Nazis in the way they do things, guys. Like, these guys, there's not much difference between, well, there's a lot of difference. As I said the other day, locking 1 million people up and telling them they have to change, that's not a country that I want anything to do with. And in that interview with Mike Pompeo that I put on the description box a couple of weeks ago, in that interview, he actually says that, you know, the way China's going is not right. They can't keep going the way they're going. To the point where he more or less says they're running out of time before the Yanks do something. Now, there's one thing that everyone's kind of missing as well, is that Australia committed troops, ships and troops to the Strait of Hormuz, which is off Iran. Iran is in partnership, allegiance with Russia and China. So, look, basically, you know, without sounding like a big doomsayer or, you know, voice of doom, somewhere along the line, something's going to snap. And I was watching Trump yesterday do an interview, and he said something that really made my ears prick up. And they were talking about a trade war with China. And he said, it's not hurting us. He said, why is it hurting us? He said, they're ripping us off for $580 billion a year, which is true. And he said, now we're making money. He said, these tariffs are hurting him. He said, and they've lost over, this is from Trump's own mouth, they've lost over 2 million jobs. And companies are leaving, factories are shutting, et cetera, in China. Now, you don't have to be Einstein to work out that if you're living in a communist state, sorry, Gian, you want your rice and stuff delivered via the party to my door so that me and my family can eat. So you're always looking up. You're not looking sideways at the supplier or anything. You're looking up for these people to be looking after you because they told you that they would. So what happens to the 2 million people who've lost their jobs? I would start to bet that things are starting to get unravel in China, but we're not hearing about it. They've already lost one of their major banks. It went pop. They've got $45 trillion in debt. The Pacific nations, since Australia and America have stepped in, have started to step away from them and go, no, you're not doing this. Vanuatu is literally, because it's French, is literally building a port, Chinese military port in Vanuatu and Fiji. And look, I predict that the one in Fiji, an American ship of some type, will go into Fiji and stay there. Because you do realise that if Fiji lets the Chinese have a military base there or whatever the bloody hell they're thinking, I don't know what they're thinking, but then that's only a couple of hours flight from Brizzy. So there's all these things at the moment that are playing out, and the Pacific Island nations are a big key to this, because if they start to turn away from China, which they are, then the Chinese are continually being backed into a corner. You might have noticed that I showed you that in the ABC thing. What I'll do is I'll give you the link for the ABC and the world bit, so you can go and chase these up yourself. I won't put every single one in there. You need to read the bit about Vietnam is starting to get really pissed off with China, to the point where if they keep on pushing them, eventually somebody's going to snap in Vietnam and they're going to blow a ship out of the water or whatever they're going to do, I don't know. But they've basically told China, we've had enough, stop pissing us off, and get your shit out of the South China Sea. And the Philippines are doing the same thing. So very soon, technically, something is going to happen in the South China Sea. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to work that out. So all these things are going on, plus you've got the financial stuff going on. So if you've lost 2 million jobs, imagine what that's doing to your economy. Imagine China's economy at the moment. It'd be going down a big, big hole. And as Mike Pompeo said, everyone, and this was out of his own mouth, everyone got blinded by greed. And they just forgot who they were dealing with, which is a communist country. So the chickens have come home to roost, folks. So you're running out of time, literally, between the financial and China and, you know, this erupting somewhere, somehow. So you need to make sure that you're actively getting prepared. Because it's just, look, it's gone past the point of no return. There's no other way we can get out of this now without a financial collapse and a war, or a war and a financial collapse. Okay, folks, verse of the day. He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? Very good. And as always, folks, we'll finish with the Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. All right, folks, I'll leave it there. God bless. Prep out.